In today's video, we're going to talk about firewalking, glasswalking, and other empowerment activities and how they're used in team settings and by individuals for personal development, for getting people outside their comfort zone, and for finding out about who they are and what makes them tick.
Welcome to ProfileTree TV. We're here today in the Innovation Factory on the Springfield Road, and we have Stephen Brown in with us. So Stephen, I'm just going to hand over to you and you can tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, because this is going to be a very interesting one today.
Well, the background, I suppose, has been fairly interesting all my life. All the way through school I was adamant that I wanted to study law, which was from about the age of 10 right through until I filled in my UCAS forms, when I took a severe change of direction and ended up not going to university, but instead went to Newcastle, County Down, to train as a outdoor pursuits instructor, which I did then for about 12 years for a couple of different organisations. And then it was time to get back to another early goal, which was to have my own business. So I set up an adventure company doing the usual sort of canoeing, kayaking, bits of team building, and then it progressed through to something which was probably perceived as a bit more extreme. New company name then at that stage, and what I was doing was taking people cliff jumping into the sea, mostly up around Ballintoy, which is good Game of Thrones territory now. But what happened whenever I started the business was there was a guy running a firewalk in Belfast that was aimed at entrepreneurs. And so I thought I'd go along to it and see what it was all about. And I absolutely loved it. I don't really remember what he said that night, but I remember very clearly the 3 times that I walked over the fire, and it had a real big impact on me. And the fact that I can still visualize each time I walked over the fire, now 12 years later nearly, it was something that just made sense for me to go into at some stage, but I never had the right opportunity. That right opportunity never came up until that guy, name's Brian Dunlop, he got in touch and told me that he was moving to Dubai and he had a few charity firewalks in the diary and he needed somebody that could go and get trained, and that would then honour the price that he made to those charities, and then he would just hand over the bookings. So I went to Sweden, trained as a firewalk instructor, and came back, and I think it was about 10 days later I did my first firewalk. So I actually did my first firewalk within a week, which was with some friends in a garden, just as a bit of a practice. But then my first sort of paid gig, I suppose, was about 10 days later then, and it's just developed from there.
That's so interesting. And so for the benefit of everybody watching, what is firewalking?
Firewalking is where you literally walk across a bed of embers. So we'll have a fire burning usually for about an hour and a half, and when it burns down that it's just the embers, we rake it out into a fire bed, and most firewalks that'll end up being about a 12-foot bed of embers.
It's quite a long way, isn't it?
It's about 4 steps. It is. It's plenty. Sometimes people say, "Oh, can we not do a longer one?" And there's no real need to do a longer one. I also train people as firewalk instructors, and we do all sorts of different firewalks then. And the longest that we would do at that stage is 40 foot. And that certainly makes you think before you just go ahead and charge on into it. But 12 foot is absolutely ample, and there's no need for any beyond that most of the time.
That's so interesting. And obviously you've got the movies, and you see the firewalking in the movies and the hot coals and everything. There's obviously a lot of misconceptions around firewalking. What sort of misconceptions are you met with, and people maybe being a bit cynical, I suppose?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Misconceptions vary all over the world. I have worked with loads of firewalk instructors in many countries, and have led firewalks in countries all around the world as well. And in some countries where religion is a huge part of community, in some of those countries actually firewalking is deemed as something where you're almost dealing with the devil, and it has that sort of connotation with it, and that can be quite difficult. In the UK and Ireland, probably the biggest misconception is that sometimes people expect that you can walk over fire and there's a guarantee you don't have a burny foot afterwards. Of course, there isn't a guarantee, and that's part of my job then, is to make people aware of that. Most times people are absolutely fine, but there's a risk to it. But often people will ask the question, so how do you make sure people don't burn? Or how do you do it so that you don't burn? You know, and that question is already loaded with the answer that I'm not going to burn, but you sometimes do. You have a part of your foot's a bit burny and a bit niggly afterwards, but it's fine then, you know. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, and so why would someone choose to do a firewalk? Yeah, the key question. Why would somebody choose to take the risk of a slightly burny foot?
Well, you know, it varies depending on who we're working with. I do a lot of charity events where people do it as a fundraiser, so it's a bit of that, get yourself out of your comfort zone, do something that's challenging. And whenever people sign up to do a firewalk that way, they're doing it no matter what I tell them. I could tell them, I guarantee you'll burn your foot, and they'll still do it because they're there to raise money for charity. So they've got that inbuilt self-peer pressure. Whenever it's in a corporate event, it's like last week I was doing one down in Galway, and nobody in the team, bar the two organisers, knew what they were doing. So this was their staff night out, and they were all told to meet at a venue at a certain time, to wear outdoor clothes, and then they'd be going out for drinks after a few hours doing an activity. And so they arrived at this venue, and there was a big fire blazing in the car park, and you can see people going by, oh, this is not a barbecue. And so for all of those people, it was a complete shock, and a fair few corporate events are done that way, and it really catches people off guard. But after I start speaking to them, sort of reassure them that they don't have to do it. You know, we work on a principle of challenge by choice. So you don't have to do the firewalk, but you can still have a really good time with everyone else that does want to do it. And a lot of the time people will sit there and think, no, this, or they'll say, I don't want to do this. But after they've done a few other exercises with us, then they often will come around, and probably 99% of people will go ahead and do the firewalk, even those that are adamant, I'm not doing it. And then the other sort of events that we do are open events, which are more anybody, you just sign up as an individual. There'll be some sort of personal development or sometimes a spiritual theme as part of that event. And people sign up for those often just because they're searching for something that's a wee bit different.
Yeah.
And they want to, you know, a lot of people are sometimes feel stuck. Like, this is where I am in my life and I want things to be a wee bit different. And so they'll go and do something which gets them outside of their comfort zone, that can maybe take them away from where they are at the minute. And it's as variable as people are variable. You know, I've had people that have turned up because they want to have more confidence, they want to feel less anxious and less worried. People turn up sometimes just because they want to meet like people that are a bit more like crazy,
adventurous,
and adventurous. You know, to meet up with like-minded type people. You know, so it's very interesting. Like, although firewalking is what I do, that's just the tool. It's always been working with people is what I'm passionate about. It just so happens that at the minute I use things like firewalking and glasswalking as the tools.
And as you say, it is very interesting because people, I think, there's so much out there and there's so much choice out there that maybe there wasn't always in traditional sense. People are looking for something different and really want to challenge themselves, and you know, team building I think does play a big part in that, especially, you know, as you're saying, the corporate aspect of it, where you know they will book you to come and set it all up, and maybe the people don't even know that what they have ahead of them. But how important, you know, is the team building aspect, do you think? I mean, you're seeing it happening every day, and especially, you know, corporate companies actually booking you and saying, you know, this is something we want for our staff.
The team building's always been an interesting concept, I suppose. You know, like I've worked delivering team building events now for 22 odd years, and team building as a term can sometimes get a bad rap.
Yes.
Sometimes people will package things up as team building when in fact it's not really team building, it's team bonding, which is, to me, is equally as important. Team building is something which, in my view, is something should be long term.
Yeah.
And it has aims and goals just like any other part of a company's business. And so a lot of the time I would say that we're not even doing team building, we are doing team bonding. We're because we're brought in to just do one element.
Yes, of course. There's no
sort of follow on through. But it's semantics, really. You know, it's still team building for people whenever they book it. The great thing about firewalking is especially if the company's able to give us a team for the right length of time, the very first thing that they'll do on arrival is they'll build a fire together under our direction. And I'm not talking about a small fire the size of this. I'm talking about a fire which is, you know, it's about 2 meters square.
Wow.
And about 1.5 meters tall. So it's like a mini bonfire.
Yeah, proper fire.
Yeah, and they'll light it, you know, so we roll up the paper and a couple of people will go in and light this, and they're using kindling, they're using newspaper, so it's a very sort of natural experience. And they will light this fire together, and that has a real sort of primal community aspect to it, where people just get to stand around a fire.
Yeah.
People absolutely love it. You know, mankind has, ever since we invented fire, has socialized around fire. So that's a great experience for people as a group, and they'll spend their time chatting, and then we'll move into, right, we need to start to get you prepared. So from the outset, they're doing stuff together, they're working together, and when it comes to the firewalking, that's an individual part of it.
Yeah.
And for some people, it doesn't faze them. They're just like, yep, I'm doing it. And for some people, it will be a fairly momentous moment in their life. You know, for some people, especially those that are afraid and have built up their emotional courage to go and do that, to go and walk over the fire, they have come this far. You know, people that it doesn't faze them, they've come this far. Great experience, the tick list. Or one off the bucket list. But for the people that have really pushed themselves way outside of their comfort zone, it becomes something that they'll remember. And what we actually do at the end of every firewalk is little glass jars for chutney.
Yes.
So we have the little glass jars, and we take the embers once they're extinguished and put them in there. And so people take those home. Some people think it's a bit cheesy, but a lot of people think it's really great. You know, and instead of doing certificates, you have this, and you can set it on your desk or just up on the mantelpiece in the house. And it's something where, for some people, like they've said to me afterwards, you know, every time I look at that, I remember how brave I was that night, you know, and it's kind of a nice little anchor to that memory for people.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's good, as you say, just to have that little trigger that it's fine to look back and go, you know, it was really good, I was really proud of myself, but actually to really have that emotional sort of little trigger that I was really afraid and I did something that totally overcame everything that I was feeling at that moment is lovely.
Yeah.
And in terms of people stepping out of their comfort zone, how important do you think that is for personal development?
I think it's hugely important for personal development, and you don't have to step out of it too far to have gained the benefit. Part of what we say to people during the firewalk is, you know, even if you're sitting here now and you're saying, I'm not doing it, well, when it comes to the time to go out to the fire, take off your socks and shoes anyway and stand on your bare feet, because then you've gone a little bit closer to actually knowing what it's like to walk on fire. You've gone a little bit further out of your comfort zone, because it's quite easy to sit here now and say, I'm not doing it, and then just be stubborn, maybe that word may not apply in all cases, but be stubborn enough that you're not going to take off your socks and shoes. And actually, most people will take off their socks and shoes. And even at that, then some people will go, do you know what? I've gone this far. I'll go a little bit further. Even one of the other activities that we do is glass walking. Where it's a bed of broken glass.
Okay.
Now it's.
I don't know. I think that maybe sounds scarier than the fire.
But that's the interesting thing. Some people will find glass walking to be more intimidating than firewalking, and vice versa. When I trained as a firewalk instructor, I didn't realise that glass walking was part and parcel of that training. And so whenever we were told we're doing a glass walk tomorrow morning, I was like, what? That's
This wasn't
insane.
on the list.
And I seen the glass coming out, and I thought, no, this is no, firewalking's okay, but this is just a step too far. But on the glass walking, like sometimes people will come up and they'll literally just put their foot on top of the glass,
And that's enough for them.
and that's enough. And those people have gone outside their comfort zone. It's the interesting thing. I don't know how far people need to go to get outside of their comfort zone. I did an event earlier this year as part of Mental Health Week. I did a number of free events for people, and we did glass walking. And now the interesting thing about glass walking is when you put the glass out and you start walking on it, it crunches. And you sometimes get people going like
Yeah.
this here.
I got a wee shiver there, I have to say.
And they're still watching, you know, but they're
It's this, yeah, the watching through the clothes, the peeking through the hands.
yeah. But there was one woman, and you know, this is like, I always have standout moments at nearly every event. There's a standout moment or two, but there was one woman at the end came up to me and she said, you know, I didn't do the glass walking. She said, but I feel really proud that I stayed in that room because I didn't know anybody in that room. And I was absolutely petrified at the sound of the glass. And she said, normally, if I feel that sort of anxiety and fear, I just leave. And I'm just really proud that I stayed. And to me, that was huge, you know, for that woman to have done that, you know. So I say it. The distances travelled by people in terms of outside of their comfort zone varies from person to person. You've already said you'd be more afraid of glass than fire. If I told you some of the other things, you might change your mind and say, well, actually that's scarier than that, you know. So but it's very good for people to do stuff that gets them out of their comfort zone, because they get to learn about themselves in the process. You know, if you just stay in your comfort zone all the time, life becomes pretty comfortable, even if you don't particularly like it.
Yeah. And it's almost getting into that routine where you just do it because it's part of the routine.
Yeah. You know, it's the people that say no to everything before they even think about it, or the people that say yes to everything before they even think about it. You know, I remember one guy one time chose not to firewalk because he said he constantly says yes to everything. And because we've it set up in a way where people are really empowered to choose what they're doing, and you know, and that's why they have to spend some time sort of reflecting about where they are and what they're at and what's going through their head. So for him, it was choosing to say no to it, even though part of him wanted to do it, but he chose to say no just for the change of experience, you know.
Yeah, which is, and as you say, so interesting. Everybody's different thoughts, feelings, emotions surrounded by the activities that you offer. And you don't just do the glass walking and the fire walking, you obviously offer other activities and retreats as well.
Yeah, the sort of main other activities is we teach people how to break boards with their bare hands.
Brilliant.
So holding the board up and boom, all the way through it, breaking bricks with your bare hands, which is a step above that. We do an activity with wooden arrows where you put the point of the arrow to your neck here and the other end against a tree or a wall, and then you push into it so the arrow snaps.
Yeah, that's on my list with the glass.
Yeah. And then another one is rebar bending. So rebar is the steel bars that are used to reinforce concrete. So I put one end to my neck here, just the soft part above the bone. You put the other end to your neck, and we walk into each other, and the bar will actually bend into a U shape, which is great for trust. You know, I would use it quite a bit with companies. Trusting yourself, but also you know, trusting the other person, but trusting yourself.
Yes.
And there's great lessons. There's all of these activities have great metaphors behind them, you know, and you can kind of change those to suit. Like in glass walking and firewalking and talk about stepping in.
Yeah.
You know, stepping into your fears and your anxieties and your worries and your excitements, because you sometimes think that your comfort zone is about getting away from the negative things, but it's also about getting into the other things. And then the rebar, it's a wee bit more about pushing through, as well as the trust aspect. Arrows is complete trust in yourself, but again, pushing through when things are uncomfortable, because life's full of uncomfortable moments. And do you back away from them, or do you sometimes just push through to get to the other side of it? Board breaking's brilliant for goal setting, but it's also like board breaking. We do a bit of breath work with people, because it's actually all about technique. Anybody can break a board with the right technique and the breath work and the self belief in it. Well, we do an interesting thing where we get them to write down their barriers to their goals, and so they can see those right in front of them, and then they break through those to reach their goal. Again, fantastic. And I remember the first time I did a board break, like I was just over the moon, because I thought there's no way I could break this, you know. And then I was just like beaming afterwards, just really empowered and so excited about myself. And people get that all the time. You know, it's
And I
brilliant.
can imagine actually taking that away just must be so meaningful for people as
Yeah.
well, because as you say, it is the whole experience, but it's actually maybe that outcome where they have done something that they didn't expect to be able to do, or that they thought would be too hard, or that they thought they couldn't say yes to,
Yeah.
and then actually going away and feeling that empowerment and actually feeling that strength in themselves.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You know, that first firewalk that I ran in my friend's garden, and it was only a few friends that I invited around, but his daughter was 8 at the time, and she asked her dad if she could do it, and he asked me if she could do it, and I said, well, she can do it if she wants to do it, but you probably need to speak to your wife before.
Because you might be in a bit of trouble afterwards.
But you know, both Angie and Shane were both happy if I said she could do it. So she did it, you know, and that's 6 or 7 years ago. But still, to this day, you know, things get a bit tough for her. Shane will say, but you know, you remember you walked through fire. She'll be like, yeah, I know, well, it's fine, I'll get on with it, you know. So it's kind of a big moment for her as well. And
Yeah, that's actually very, very brave. But sometimes I think children have that sort of, they don't have that filter where they just are like, new experience, yeah, I'm going to try it. And they don't have that same anxiety or that worry, I think, that maybe adults have. And that whole, even, I think, you know, even like learning languages and things as adults, you don't want to sound silly, and you don't want to do stuff that makes you maybe not look as good as you could look. And I think, as you say, what you're doing takes all that away, because everybody's in the same position. And
the interesting thing with kids as well is kids are far more resilient than we as adults give them credit for a lot of the time, you know, and they know what's right for them and what's not right for them. And sometimes their voices aren't heard well enough, you know, because we have our plans for what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And so to me, it was a really great opportunity where she had complete say in what she was doing or not doing, and her mum and dad were able to trust her to go with that, you know.
Which is lovely too. Just
So
the
there's like
empowerment
loads of
even in that,
layers and stuff, you know, which I love. You know, you can peel away at the sort of work that I do and what's going on for people, and it's
and as you say, and everybody's different, and what you do can meet all those different needs, all in different ways.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. And you do retreats as well.
Yeah. So I do a few different sorts of retreats. I do like weekend retreats here, and they'll normally involve a fire walk and maybe a sweat lodge, which is something else that I do, which is definitely not normal. Which, if you're not familiar with sweat lodges, it's a Native American ceremony where we use willow, we build a dome. Which is then covered in blankets, so it's not airtight, but it's pretty closed in, and it's pretty dark, and in the middle of it, in the ground, there's a hole, and then outside we have a fire burning where we heat up stones, and so everybody goes inside and sits in a circle around it, and the hot stones are brought in, so it basically acts like a sauna. And we do a lot of stuff with people around intentions, using the sweat lodge. So yeah, so some retreats like that, which kind of lend themselves into sort of spiritual and personal development, which to me are pretty much one and the same. Spiritual development is all about the person, as is personal development. But you kind of, in this country, certainly I find the term spiritual can bring up all sorts of connotations then that maybe people go, nah, this is too airy-fairy for me, you know. But my work is very real work with people and getting them to connect with themselves and with what's going on. But then I also do retreats out in Morocco.
Wow.
So out in the Sahara Desert, heading out again now in March of this year.
It's amazing.
And so people will spend 5 days in the desert, and they'll do a variety of different activities, including firewalking, and we've done board breaking out there, but we've also got people, it's quite an immersive experience, so we have local guides that stay out with us and prepare our meals and stuff. It's pretty fancy camping really, but they look after us, and just to spend time with so they're Bedouin people,
Yes.
and to spend time with them and to learn about their culture. It's not even something which was happened by design. I would love to say it was all part of my big plan, but it didn't. And it's always been a huge impact for people, just to see another culture and experience another
Yeah.
culture. And what's interesting is, you know, for a lot of those guys that have been looking after us, they are almost striving to have what we have in Western society.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody that's out with me, they're looking for more what they have in their society. They want a slower pace of living. They want to spend more time with people, eat good natural food. You know, so it's kind of an interesting environment to be in. But yeah, it's 5 days in the desert. You get a bit of time running about Marrakesh as well, which is a completely different experience for some people.
I can imagine, yes.
But it's that time in the desert where we have quiet time with different meditation processes and some very just gentle activities, as well as the high empowerment activities such as the firewalk.
Yeah, no, and you're right, because I think everybody is very busy, and especially people in business and everybody really, you know, with family life and jobs and everything else, and there's so much, we're bombarded from every direction. How important do you think personal development is, and just taking time out for yourself?
It's hugely important. You know, as an example, mentioned I run Firewalk instructor training courses, and some people do that because they want to be Firewalk instructors. Some people do it just as a challenge, as a personal development experience. A couple of years ago, I had a chief executive of a multinational company take part in the instructor training course, and his feedback afterwards, or the sort of highlight of his feedback, was it was so good not to be depending on his phone or to be at everybody else's beck and call, because when we're doing these activities there's no time for taking calls. Yes, if dinner time, if you maybe need to do stuff, but he actually made a concerted effort to not look at his phone. You know, his PA was looking after things, so he just left everything, up until actually the last night, when he did look at some messages before we were doing the big 40-foot firewalk, and then it actually really affected the rest of his evening.
It's amazing,
he
isn't
said,
it?
because then he was
wish I
starting
hadn't bothered even.
because he was now thinking about this problem that was going on at work that he couldn't do anything about anyway. So like one of the things at a lot of events I do is try and get people to leave their phones away. Like a lot of our events, I'll have a professional photographer there, because everybody wants their Instagram photograph of them walking across the fireglass anyway.
Proof, social proof.
Yeah, so I have a photographer there that will get that photograph for everyone, in the hope that most people will forget about their phones for a bit, instead of trying to video everything, and you just kind of end up living your life behind a lens, and instead
and
of
then you're not getting the
experiencing
full experience either, because as you say, you're busy focusing on a phone, you're maybe not experiencing what other people are experiencing, as well as you're busy concentrating on what you're doing.
They're looking at that, you're not going to see that somebody else is having a bit of a moment, and actually just putting your hand on their shoulder might mean the world to them, you know, or you know, yeah, you don't feel the same way if you're behind the lens. So it's, as much as possible, I try to get people away from phones.
Yeah, and just and take some time out
Yeah.
for yourself. And in terms of, obviously, you've built a business out of this, which is amazing, because imagine maybe when you first brought the concept to Northern Ireland, maybe it wasn't just as well known. How have you really got over those challenges of getting out there and actually getting people to sign up and come to the events? And
I think I've been a bit lucky.
I doubt that very much.
Well, there's a couple of factors. You know, one is in terms of online presence.
Yes.
You know, ever since I started working for myself 11 years ago or whenever that was, you know, I ended up building my own website. A friend built my first website, but I started to learn how to do it, and it's all done on WordPress. So I build my own websites now, and there's a geek inside of me, and I like learning about SEO and how to do things like that. So I work on that, and I actually, you know, I get inquiries coming in from all over the world, which would, you know, I would put it down to that. Social media is the same. You know, there's not a lot of firewalk instructors in the world.
I can imagine it's
as you can
very
imagine.
specialist
It's
what
pretty,
you do.
It's pretty niche, so it's quite easy to stand out, you know. But more and more, because social media is just part and parcel of day, you know, you have to do more. And I have a love-hate relationship with social media. You know, I closed my own accounts there for about 5 months this year, and was adamant I'm not going back to any of them. In fact, if I didn't work for myself, I wouldn't have any of them, you know. But you kind of know that you need to do a wee bit more on Facebook and a wee bit more on Instagram, and then slowly it creeps in and you're back to it's there 24/7, and I don't particularly like any of it, you know, but needs must whenever you work for yourself. And then I've also been lucky that, you know, a really good group of friends over the years around me that are able to support me, and even family support. Setting up a new business is very important. And people that might be going, Stevie, do you know what, you're mad. Like, you want us to go and walk on fire, but you know what, we've done all our stupid stuff with you, we'll go and do this, you know. And it kind of built up from that. And then it's word of mouth still the biggest seller, you know. And if you always maintain you're only as good as your last job, and always do the best that we can for people to give them a good experience. And
and you're right. I think, as you say, it is about the full experience, and just what you're saying, from the actually coming and setting the fire up together, and, you know, having the time around the fire before the whole experience. It's part and parcel of the whole thing, which becomes very memorable, rather than turn up, do a 5-minute thing and off you go. And so when you set up business yourself, you're talking about having a support network there. What tips would you give to someone starting up a new business, especially something that's very specialised or very niche?
Oh, what tips?
Put you on the spot.
That wasn't in the list. People.
Yeah.
People is the big one, you know. As I said, my background is in adventure sports, and I've worked with and employed people. Some people have all the qualifications coming out of their ears, but I still wouldn't work with them. And you have other people who have people skills. And they may not be the most qualified person in the world. In fact, they might be still at the very early stage, but if they have the people skills, then I want to work along with them. And anybody that works with me, it's because of their people skills, you know. And I think no matter what you're doing, business relies on people. And so put your people first, and get the right people that are going to be there to support what you do, and empower your people. You know, it's like, give people their sort of own autonomy. Like I've people that run firewalks, you know, under my name, and yes, I might be out of my comfort zone the first time that they go off to do a firewalk, but it still feels really good to know that actually I can trust that person to go and do it. I'll still be worried, but I can still trust them to go and do it. And because everybody brings their own sort of special way of doing things. You know, I don't train people so that they're complete duplicates of what I am. You know, I want Ian and James and any of those guys to just go and,
Yeah.
like, there's key things that we have to get across, but make the whole experience your own, which they do, and they get rave feedback as well, you know. So
No, and you're right. I mean, we've talked to loads of people and in these interviews, and that's, you know, the theme, and we would totally back it up that, you know, people and the people you're surrounding yourself with are so important. But actually having that culture where people actually can be themselves and be creative and, you know, actually have some sort of responsibility for what they're doing is massive in empowering people and actually allowing them to buy into the culture that you want to develop in a business. And any tips or techniques for whole businesses that want to step out of their comfort zone? Because sometimes it's easy to do it personally for yourself, but you maybe have business leaders or, you know, people, small business managers or owners that, you know, think, do you know what, my team could really do with just something that's going to pull us all together and just really get us thinking and thinking out of the box and stepping out of our comfort zone.
I think any time that you can give your team space, whether that's, you know, there's all sorts of things that you can do now as activities, you know, you've even things like bowling and stuff like that, but it's the space around that, I think, that's important, where people can talk to each other and just have a bit of fun together, but trying to do that on a regular basis. You know, like, there's a fairly large company I work with in Dublin, and they've about 1,600 staff at their office in Dublin, and they have 4 events for all their teams every year, where they're out doing different activities. Now, one of those is like they do stuff for charity, so like they could be away planting trees, you know, at the cancer centre, stuff like that. They have their Christmas party as one, and then they have 2 which are whatever it is they really want to go and do. And I do a lot of work with those guys, but it's not so much about what this one thing. It's that ongoing space that that you provide for people, where they get to be creative, they get to learn a bit more about each other and about themselves, particularly if they're doing firewalking or something like that, you know. But it's that space where they can just, who knows what, and if you can lead that in a way where it's not too sort of regimented, but where you can say, right, let's just brainstorm some wacky ideas as part of this day. You know, I think there's a lot to be gained from that, other than just your day to day.
Yeah.
It just becomes perhaps monotonous, you know. But if there's nothing different happening, there's nothing different can happen.
And as you say, it's even building those relationships within staff that maybe, you know, especially in such a big company, you're probably never going to know everybody, but actually having the opportunity to maybe meet 5 people that you've never actually met before, or that you've only talked to by email, it's a massive opportunity as well. And would you deal with a lot of people, you know, maybe would be stressed or anxious or anxiety? Would you see what you do as something that can help with that as well?
Yeah. Like any of the retreats that I do, more so, you know, in a corporate event or a charity event, that's not what people are there for, you know. But any of the retreats, or even I do like a one night firewalking experience every so often. At those times, those are the right sort of events then for people, where they're never big events, you know. And even my retreats, I don't like running big retreats, you know, 20 people maximum, because I actually want to spend time with whoever comes along and get to know them. And those are the right sort of events for people that want to deal with personal issues. You know, the very first Firewalk instructor course that I ran, there was a girl, she only signed up to it about 4 days before it, and after the 40-foot firewalk, you know, she just came up to me and said, I feel so proud of myself.
Yeah.
And that was a girl who on the first morning said, I'm outside of my comfort zone already, speaking to people that I don't know.
It's amazing, isn't
you know,
it?
so she travelled a huge journey on that experience, and I know, in fact, there's been a newspaper article about her, you know, but I know that it's really helped her with her anxiety and her worries and her nervousness, you know. So yeah, it can have a really big impact. But you know, it's like how long's a piece of string? You know, what does it take? You know,
Yeah.
that this might work for one person, but for somebody else, they actually might need to go and get counselling or
Yeah.
something which is completely different. You know, but it's fun for people to experiment with these things and hopefully find out something which helps them and works for them.
Yeah, and learn something new about themselves. I mean, from what, just talking to you, I'm just thinking the possibilities are endless in terms of actually really learning about yourself and thinking about how you approach situations and how you can maybe challenge that approach in the future.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. So what does the future hold for you and the fireworking and the glasswork? I'm afraid to ask, to be honest.
Future, I'm actually in the, like even yesterday I was speaking to a solicitor in the States, so
Oh, wow.
getting set up stateside at the minute is the big one. So
Brilliant.
there's a few big events actually already scheduled in more or less for next year, so that's kind of exciting. But things could change, you know. I've always said that about business. It's like don't be so focused on everything needs to go this way.
Yes.
Actually being fluid and just accepting what comes your way and accepting what doesn't come your way, I think gives you a lot of peace of mind. Of course, you have your bottom line that you want to think about as well, but if you can sort of work through in business and not be so uptight about things need to go this way because things change. I've had many's an opportunity that I thought, yes, this is going to be brilliant, and then at the last minute it's changed, and that's the way it goes. So who knows really, you know, if there's lots of training courses lined up for next year, running a Master Instructor training course as well next year, and really working on the sort of global brand is what's
So
happening.
going international.
Yeah, going in. I've already done quite a lot of
that's what
work
I mean. You're saying
across
about being in
Europe,
Morocco
and you know, a few months ago I'd sent a friend a list of companies that I've worked with over the last 5 years, and he was just blown away. He's like, I had no idea you've worked with half of these people, you know, like they're big household names.
Yeah.
And you kind of, a lot of the work you don't even put out there because they don't particularly want
Yes.
people to know, because actually, you know, like I remember 20 years ago, the Northern Ireland Civil Service, the loads of team building events. Now they don't do any team building events, you know, so it's the same. Some companies just don't want people to know that they're spending money on this, which is a wee bit backward, I think, because you need to spend money on your people.
Yeah, and to be honest, that might actually attract people to come to work for them,
Yeah.
because they see them as forward thinking, and actually it's people that are concerned about their staff and they want to develop their staff.
Yeah.
No, so it's very exciting. We'll be looking out for the global domination then in 2019. So Stephen, if someone did want to book an event or come to a retreat, what's the best way to contact you?
Probably just through the website,
Brilliant.
firewalkhq.com, or again, FirewalkHQ on social media. You'll get me, as long as I'm not off it.
Or you're not in Morocco or somewhere.
Yeah, but FirewalkHQ will get you there, and I do a fair bit of blogging on it, so there's the website will answer most questions for people as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming in today. It was really, really, really interesting. And I think I even learned something about myself with the whole glass thing. But no, it's really, really interesting. So thank you for your time. That's all from us today at ProfileTree TV, the content marketing agency. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you very soon.